Everyone laughed when a human got the king's ugly daughter, then shocked silenced them. Towers of shimmering crystal rose into the sky, reflecting the twin suns that bathed the planet in golden light. He had visited many worlds before, but none had been like this. Everything was precise, polished, and unnervingly perfect. Aliens moved along the streets with an air of pride, their long, elegant forms gliding with effortless grace. Human eyes often found them intimidating, but Curran simply smiled. He had always loved challenges, and this planet promised plenty. He adjusted the strap of his bag and walked toward the main palace, a structure that towered above the city like a mountain of glass. The assignment was simple on paper: establish a diplomatic connection and observe the customs of this alien society. In reality, he knew it would be far more complicated. Humans were rare here, often considered clumsy and foolish compared to the refined citizens of this world. But Curran had a secret weapon: curiosity. It had served him well on countless planets. Curiosity made people open to him. And perhaps curiosity would make these aliens see more than just a human stranger. Inside the palace, the corridors were wider than any Curran had ever seen, lined with smooth panels that glowed softly as he passed. Servants moved silently along the halls, carrying trays of shimmering liquids and small machines that hummed faintly. At the end of the corridor, a grand hall opened up. Crystal chandeliers floated above, casting dancing lights across the polished floor. Crowds of aliens had already gathered, their eyes sharp, watching every movement. Curran felt the weight of their gaze, but he held his head high. He was not here to cower. He was here to learn, to meet, and if possible, to impress. The murmurs began almost immediately. As Curran entered, whispers flowed through the crowd. "A human," one voice said. "Why is he even allowed here?" Another snickered. He ignored them, keeping his eyes forward. At the center of the hall, surrounded by a soft halo of light, stood the princess. Her presence was quiet yet commanding, not through grandeur but through an air of intelligence. Princess Leora, the king's daughter, was said to be unusual by her own people's standards. Where others valued symmetry, smooth skin, and elegance, Leora's features were different. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, her smile small but knowing, and her hair fell in a way that defied the perfection the society expected. She was called ugly in whispers, though Curran found her fascinating. There was something real and honest about her that no mirror could judge. The first exchange between them was simple. Leora's eyes studied Curran carefully as he approached. "You are human," she said, her voice carrying over the murmuring crowd. "I have not met many like you," Curran nodded, bowing slightly. "I am," he said, "and I am curious. I hope to learn what makes your world yours." There was no flattery, no grand statements, just honesty. Leora raised an eyebrow, intrigued. In a society where most spoke with careful politeness, his words were refreshing. The courtiers nearby gasped. It was unusual for anyone to speak plainly in the presence of royalty. Some laughed under their breath, pointing to Curran as if he were a fool who did not understand how delicate the situation was. "A human daring to speak so freely," one whispered. Another smirked. "He must be mad to think he can impress the princess." Curran, aware of the eyes on him, did not falter. He had encountered ridicule before, and it had never stopped him. Often, the loudest critics were the most certain of their own limitations. As the ceremony continued, Curran noticed Leora moving gracefully between the guests, greeting them not with empty words but with questions. She asked about their studies, their projects, their inventions. It was not politeness, it was genuine interest. When she reached Curran, she asked, "What do you study, human?" He smiled. "I study people, machines, and the ways they work together, and I study the ways people underestimate one another." She laughed softly at that, a sound like small bells. No one in the hall expected her to laugh at a human's words, least of all the onlookers, who were already prepared to mock him. Their snickers grew quieter, replaced by curiosity. After the formal ceremony, Curran was invited to walk in the palace gardens with Leora. The gardens were unlike any he had seen on other planets. Plants shimmered with soft metallic colors. Flowers emitted gentle musical tones when touched, and small streams reflected the sky in vivid hues. They walked in silence at first, observing the plants and listening to the soft, soothing melodies that the flora created. Curran asked questions about the gardens, the technology that nurtured them, and the strange devices that kept the ecosystem balanced. Leora answered with patience and precision, and for the first time, Curran felt that he was not being judged for his human flaws. Instead, he was being seen for his mind and his curiosity. Most visitors barely notice the music, Leora said, touching a glowing petal. They see beauty only in what they are told is beautiful, but everything here has purpose. The music, the shimmer, even the shadows, they are not accidents. They are meant to teach us, to remind us that there is value beyond the surface. Curran nodded. I think humans are the same, he said. We are often judged by our looks or our strength, but our true value is in what we can create and understand. Leora smiled again, genuinely this time. It was the kind of smile that made the world feel lighter, and Curran realized he had not expected to feel at home on this alien planet. But with her, he did. Word of their walk spread quickly through the palace. Rumors began circulating that Curran the human had been seen alone with the princess. Whispers turned to laughter in the halls. What does a human want with the princess? Some asked. Surely he is not serious. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The entire court seemed to be preparing for a spectacle, certain that the human would fail. Curran had felt this type of doubt before, and yet he found it strangely motivating. Humans had survived by thinking differently, by trying what others would never attempt. Perhaps this was no different. The next day, the king announced a formal audience. Curran was to meet him and present himself properly. The palace staff prepared him with instructions on etiquette, but Curran's mind focused less on appearances and more on understanding the society. When he entered the grand hall where King Tharian sat on his throne, he could feel the weight of expectation. Aliens of every shape and size watched silently, their expressions a mixture of amusement and skepticism. Curran bowed politely. "Your Majesty," he said, "thank you for welcoming me to your world." The king regarded him carefully. He was tall, imposing, and traditionally regal. "You are a human," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I have heard that you have shown interest in my daughter." There was no accusation in the words, only a test. Curran straightened. "Yes, your Majesty," he said. "I have met her and I have learned from her. I respect her intelligence and her creativity. That is why I wish to continue knowing her, to collaborate and to understand your people better." A ripple ran through the court. Some laughed softly, assuming the human was naive. Others looked uncertain. The king studied Curran for a long moment, then raised an eyebrow. "Do you know what my daughter's reputation is among our people?" he asked. Curran nodded. "I have heard, your Majesty, but I judge not by reputation, but by the person themselves. I believe that Leora's intelligence and vision are far more important than what others call beauty." For a heartbeat, the hall was silent. Then a soft murmur spread, shock, disbelief, and finally curiosity. The king leaned back, his face unreadable. "You have courage to speak so plainly," he said. "Many would bow and remain silent. Few would see beyond appearances." Curran smiled. "I see value in what is real, your Majesty, not in what is expected." That evening, Curran and Leora met in the palace library, a quiet sanctuary filled with glowing books and devices that floated in mid-air, displaying information. Leora handed him a small device she had been working on, a personal assistant that could translate multiple languages and optimize energy use in homes. "I have never had anyone understand my work before," she said softly. "Most people dismiss it as strange. But you seem to understand." Curran studied the device, turning it in his hands. "It is clever," he said, and it can be made even better with a few adjustments. If you allow me, I would like to help you refine it." Her eyes lit up with excitement. "You would do that?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "not because you are the princess, but because I see something here worth nurturing." And in that simple statement, a connection formed. Leora realized that Curran was different from all the others, and Curran realized that for the first time, he was in a place where curiosity and skill mattered more than reputation or appearance. Meanwhile, whispers throughout the palace grew louder. "The human will ruin her reputation," some said. "He does not belong here." But Curran and Leora were not concerned. They had discovered a new kind of partnership, one built on respect, understanding, and shared vision. The world outside might laugh, but inside, a seed of change was quietly taking root. By the end of the first week, Curran had not only impressed Leora but had quietly begun to prove his value. The palace staff noticed his ingenuity, the devices he improved, and the careful way he listened and learned. The laughter and ridicule did not stop entirely, but it began to change into curiosity. People wanted to see what this human and the so-called ugly princess could achieve together, and Curran knew that this was only the beginning. He had arrived as an outsider, laughed at and underestimated, but he would show them that humans were capable of more than anyone could imagine, not through force, but through intelligence, kindness, and collaboration. And in doing so, he and Leora would change not just their own destinies, but the perception of humans in this alien world forever. The days after the royal audience passed in a blur of activity for Curran. The palace had become both his home and his laboratory, a place where curiosity and ingenuity could thrive. Leora welcomed him with the same quiet enthusiasm she had shown from the start, and together, they wandered through the palace's hidden rooms, gardens, and laboratories. Every corner seemed designed to inspire thought, creativity, and learning. Curran felt alive in a way he had rarely felt on other worlds. In one of the private labs, Leora had collected dozens of devices she had invented over the years. Some were simple, machines to purify water, devices that could monitor plant growth. But others were more complex, blending alien technology with abstract principles Curran had never encountered. At first, he studied quietly, observing the logic behind her designs. He was careful not to interfere, only to learn. Then slowly he began to suggest modifications, small improvements here and there, always respectful of her ideas. "You are surprisingly good at this," Leora said one afternoon, leaning over a glowing panel. "Most humans I have heard about would break something within minutes," Curran chuckled. "I like to observe first," he said. "Then I try to find ways to improve without ruining the original idea." Leora nodded thoughtfully. "That is a wise approach. Too many people rush in without understanding. I like that you do not." Word of Curran's involvement with the princess spread quickly throughout the palace. At first, it was met with laughter and gossip. Servants whispered about how the human could never understand the princess's work. Courtiers mocked him behind closed doors, saying that he would embarrass Leora and ruin the family's reputation. But as days passed, those whispers began to shift. Some noticed how carefully Curran worked, how quickly he learned the alien systems, and how well he communicated with Leora. Skepticism began to be replaced with cautious curiosity. One morning, Leora approached Curran with an idea that made his heart beat faster. "I want to hold a small exhibition," she said, her eyes bright. "Just for the palace staff and a few selected guests. I want to show them my inventions and see if anyone can benefit from them." Curran's eyes widened. "An exhibition?" he asked. "You think they will listen?" Leora smiled faintly. "Some will laugh, certainly, but others may learn, and we must try, do we not?" Curran nodded, feeling a surge of excitement. "Then let's prepare. I will help you." They spent the next several days organizing the exhibition. Curran and Leora worked together side by side, testing devices, adjusting circuits, and explaining concepts in ways that would be understandable to their audience. Curran's human perspective brought fresh insight. He suggested slight changes to some of Leora's inventions, making them easier to operate and more efficient. In turn, Leora taught him the principles behind the alien technology, showing him how energy flowed through circuits that he had never seen before. Their collaboration became seamless, a dance of mutual respect and intellect. The day of the exhibition arrived, and the palace halls were filled with staff, nobles, and a few curious citizens. Rumors about the human and the ugly princess had reached even the palace's outer corridors, and many came just to witness what they expected to be a disaster. Curran felt their eyes on him as he set up the devices, but he did not falter. He glanced at Leora, who gave him a small, reassuring nod. Together, they began their demonstration. Leora presented a device that could detect and balance energy flows in homes, reducing waste and preventing malfunctions. Curran explained the modifications he had suggested, improvements that made the device simpler to use and more reliable. Some of the audience members whispered, skeptical of his ability to understand alien technology. But when the device was activated, lights in the exhibition hall adjusted smoothly, small panels shifted to collect excess energy, and a gentle hum filled the room as everything balanced perfectly. The audience gasped in surprise. "This is remarkable," said one of the courtiers, leaning forward. "I did not expect it to work so well." Another muttered, "Perhaps the human was not entirely useless after all." Curran remained calm, allowing the results to speak for themselves. Leora watched the reactions closely, her lips curved into a small, proud smile. She had always believed in her work, but seeing others finally recognize its value was a new experience. Encouraged by the success, Curran demonstrated a second device, a communication unit that could link several parts of the palace instantly, allowing messages and information to travel faster than traditional methods. He explained how humans used similar technology on their own planet and how adapting the concept could benefit the alien society. When he activated the unit, messages appeared almost instantly across the screens in the room, and the audience erupted in astonishment. Some of the nobles exchanged hesitant glances, their earlier laughter replaced by curiosity and admiration. During a brief pause, Leora turned to Curran and whispered, "I did not expect them to take so long to believe." Curran smiled. "They will learn. Most people just need to see something work before they understand it." She nodded. "You are patient. I like that." For the first time, Curran felt the warmth of genuine acceptance. Not from obligation, not from politeness, but from people witnessing his efforts and recognizing their value. As the exhibition continued, the small group of spectators became increasingly engaged. Questions were asked, suggestions were made, and even some of the most skeptical courtiers began to see the potential in the human princess collaboration. Curran and Leora demonstrated a small energy device designed for public use, capable of stabilizing local energy grids in times of fluctuation. As they activated it, a soft, harmonious glow spread across the hall, illustrating the device's effect. One of the city engineers leaned forward, impressed. "If scaled properly, this could prevent blackouts across the city," he said. Leora's eyes sparkled. "Exactly what we intended," she replied. The exhibition lasted most of the afternoon, and by the end, Curran and Leora had not only shown their inventions, but also challenged the audience's assumptions about humans and outsiders. The laughter and mockery that had greeted them on the first day had vanished, replaced by cautious respect. Even those who had once whispered about Curran's foolishness began to acknowledge his skill and intelligence. After the exhibition, Curran and Leora retreated to the palace gardens to rest. The garden paths were quiet now, the soft musical tones of the plants filling the air. Curran sat on a bench, exhausted but exhilarated. "They surprised me," he admitted. I expected some respect, maybe some curiosity, but not this level of change. Leora sat beside him. You surprised them, she said. And me. I did not realize how much someone from outside our society could contribute. Curran looked at her. I did not realize how much someone from inside could teach me. Their laughter mingled with the soft hum of the garden, a shared joy in discovery and mutual admiration. In the following days, Curran became a regular presence in the palace workshops. He and Leora worked on refining existing inventions, exploring new concepts, and experimenting with ideas that neither of them had considered before. Word of their collaboration continued to spread throughout the city, reaching scholars, engineers, and even city officials. They began seeking advice, eager to learn from the human who had defied expectations and the princess who had valued skill over appearances. The success of the exhibition also began to change the whispers in the palace. Courtiers who had once laughed at Curran's presence now spoke with respect, asking questions and seeking his input. Servants who had doubted his ability approached him for guidance on using the devices, while young apprentices watched in awe as he and Leora worked together. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. The city began to see humans not as outsiders, but as allies, capable of bringing fresh ideas, ingenuity, and perspective. One afternoon, while testing a new device designed to improve public transportation, Curran and Leora encountered a problem. The device required a delicate balance of energy that neither of them could achieve alone. After several failed attempts, Curran stepped back and suggested, "Perhaps we need to combine our approaches, not just my ideas or yours, but both together." Leora nodded thoughtfully. "You may be right." They spent hours collaborating, adjusting circuits, rethinking the principles, and combining their knowledge. When they finally activated the device, it worked perfectly. The small transport units moved smoothly and efficiently, and a nearby observer exclaimed, "Incredible! This is unlike anything we have ever seen." That moment marked a turning point. Curran and Leora's collaboration was no longer just a curiosity. It had become a model of innovation. People began to approach them with challenges, seeking their insight on problems that had long been considered unsolvable. The palace staff, once skeptical, now actively supported their efforts, eager to witness what the human and the princess could achieve together. Even the king, who had initially been cautious, began to take notice. He observed from a distance as Curran and Leora worked, occasionally asking questions and offering advice. While he remained cautious, he could not deny the results. The human had proven himself capable, not through force or charm, but through intelligence, patience, and collaboration. By the end of the second week, Curran realized that something fundamental had changed. He had arrived as an outsider, laughed at and underestimated, but he was no longer simply a visitor. He had become a valued contributor, someone whose ideas and insights mattered. And Leora, once dismissed by her society for her appearance, had found an equal partner who saw her for who she truly was. Together, they had begun to reshape the perceptions of their world, not with conflict but with creativity, respect, and shared vision. As they walked through the palace gardens that evening, the twin suns casting long shadows across the paths, Leora turned to Curran. "Do you think the city is ready for what comes next?" she asked. Curran smiled. "I think they are ready to see what humans and aliens can do when they work together, and I think we are ready too." Leora's eyes sparkled with excitement and determination. "Then let us show them." And in that quiet, golden light, the partnership that had begun as curiosity and courage had blossomed into something extraordinary. A human and a princess, proving that intelligence, kindness, and collaboration could overcome prejudice and expectation. The city had laughed at them once. Soon, it would be silenced in astonishment by what they could achieve together. The city had grown quiet in the early hours, the twin suns casting long streaks of golden light across the streets and towers. Curran walked alongside Leora through the palace gardens, their steps light, yet purposeful. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of invention, discovery, and surprising recognition. The initial laughter and whispers that had followed Curran into the palace had faded, replaced by cautious respect. People were beginning to see what he and Leora could accomplish together, and their combined ingenuity had already solved several minor problems that had troubled the city for years. But Curran knew that the next challenge would be bigger, much bigger. "Have you seen the new report?" Leora asked, her eyes scanning the parchment she held. "The city council is discussing the energy network again. They want a solution for the instability that affects the outer districts. People are losing power at night and it's disrupting communication and essential services." Curran glanced at the report. The numbers were complex, the problem widespread, and the stakes high. "It's serious," he said, his tone calm. "But I think we can handle it." Leora looked at him, a faint smile forming. "I knew you would say that," she said, "and I agree. We must try." For the next several days, Curran and Leora worked tirelessly in the palace lab. The energy network of the city was unlike anything Curran had encountered before. It relied on a delicate balance of renewable sources, energy storage units, and distribution systems controlled by advanced algorithms. Any miscalculation could cause blackouts in entire districts. But Curran approached the problem with the same curiosity and logic that had guided him from the start. Leora provided insight into the alien technology, and together they began to map out a solution. At first, progress was slow. Some devices overheated, circuits failed, and the data from the city sensors was inconsistent. Curran would pause, observe, and suggest small adjustments. Leora would refine the designs, making subtle improvements that brought them closer to stability. The process was painstaking, but neither of them grew frustrated. They had learned from each other, and patience had become their greatest strength. One afternoon, as they were testing a prototype in a simulation room, Curran noticed a pattern in the data that no one had seen before. "Leora, look here," he said, pointing at the holographic display. "The fluctuations are not random. They are linked to certain energy nodes that are overloaded during peak hours. If we redistribute the load and adjust the energy flow slightly, we could stabilize the network." Leora leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You're right," she said. "I didn't see that. This could work." They worked through the night, making adjustments, testing each change and carefully monitoring the results. Slowly, the simulated network began to stabilize. Energy levels remained steady, devices functioned smoothly, and the simulations indicated that their solution could work on a city-wide scale. Curran and Leora exchanged a glance, a mix of excitement and cautious optimism. "We have to test it in the real system," Curran said. "If this works, it could change the city's future." The next day, they presented their solution to the city council. The room was filled with officials, engineers, and curious citizens who had been invited to witness the demonstration. Many of the same people who had doubted Curran's abilities now watched with keen interest. The council members listened carefully as Curran explained the human logic behind the redistribution of energy, while Leora demonstrated how the alien technology could implement the solution efficiently. Some council members were hesitant. "What if it fails?" one asked. "A city-wide blackout could be catastrophic." Curran met his gaze steadily. "We have tested it thoroughly," he said. "The simulations show stability, and the system is designed to adjust in real time. It will not fail if monitored correctly." Leora added, "I will personally oversee the implementation. We are confident it will succeed." With cautious approval, the council allowed the prototype to be applied to a small section of the city. Curran and Leora watched anxiously as the energy nodes were adjusted, flows redistributed, and devices brought online. At first, Nothing seemed to change. Then slowly, the indicators on the monitors began to stabilize. Power levels became steady and devices operated smoothly. The engineers monitoring the system exchanged astonished glances. "It's working," one whispered. "It's actually working." Word spread quickly. The city watched in real time as the prototype stabilized the energy flow in the selected district. Lights remained constant, communications were uninterrupted, and the residents noticed the difference immediately. Small celebrations broke out as people realized they could rely on the city's systems once again. Curran and Leora stood together, observing the monitors, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. They had done it. They had solved a problem that had baffled the city for years. Encouraged by the success, the council approved the full implementation across all districts. Curran and Leora worked tirelessly for the next several days, coordinating the adjustments and monitoring the system. The palace workshops were filled with engineers and technicians, all eager to assist. Curran's knowledge of human technology and problem-solving, combined with Leora's mastery of alien systems, created a synergy that had never been seen before. During one of the long nights, as they worked to finalize the city-wide deployment, Leora paused and looked at Curran. "Do you realize what we've done?" she asked softly. Curran smiled, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We've shown them that humans can contribute meaningfully, and we've shown them that working together, we can solve problems that seemed impossible." Leora nodded. "And not just humans. We've also shown them that appearances don't matter. Ideas and skill matter more than what people look like." Curran looked at her, and for a moment the world outside seemed to fade. They were two minds united by curiosity and respect, creating something extraordinary. Finally, the full deployment was ready. Curran and Leora coordinated with the city operators, activating the network across all districts. As the monitors lit up and the energy stabilized, a cheer rose from the control room. Engineers, council members, and citizens watching the live feed all reacted with amazement. Lights in homes, streets, and public buildings shone steadily, communications operated flawlessly, and the city experienced uninterrupted power for the first time in decades. The impact was immediate. Residents sent messages of gratitude to the palace, praising the ingenuity of the human and the princess who had worked together to solve the crisis. News outlets covered the story, highlighting how Curran's human perspective had brought a fresh approach to a long-standing problem. Even those who had laughed at the beginning of his journey were now forced to acknowledge his talent. The laughter that had once followed him was replaced with admiration and respect. At a public ceremony held in the palace courtyard, the king addressed the crowd. "Today, we witness a remarkable achievement," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered citizens. "A human who arrived as an outsider has worked alongside my daughter to solve a problem that has troubled our city for years. This is proof that skill, intelligence, and collaboration matter more than appearances or prejudice." The crowd erupted in applause. Curran and Leora stood together, smiling but humble, letting the recognition settle without seeking personal glory. After the ceremony, the city slowly returned to its daily rhythm. Curran and Leora continued to work on new projects, improving systems and introducing innovations that benefited both citizens and the environment. The trust they had earned allowed them greater freedom to explore ideas, experiment with new technologies, and mentor young inventors who had previously been ignored or dismissed. Their influence extended beyond the palace walls, gradually reshaping the culture of the city itself. Despite their success, Curran remained grounded. He understood that admiration could be fleeting, and that the true measure of their achievement was the positive change they created. Leora, too, stayed focused, balancing her royal duties with the work that had become her passion. Together, they formed a partnership that was both inspiring and practical, a model of cooperation that challenged the prejudices and assumptions of their society. One evening, after another long day of testing and adjustments, Curran and Leora sat on the palace balcony overlooking the city. The lights below shone steadily, a testament to their efforts. "It is beautiful," Curran said softly. "Not just the city, but what we've done here." Leora leaned back, her eyes reflecting the golden glow of the streets. "Yes," she said, "and it is just the beginning. There are so many other challenges, so many other ways we can help." Curran smiled. "Then we will face them together." Their collaboration had transformed the perception of humans in the city. No longer were outsiders laughed at or dismissed. Curran's success proved that intelligence, creativity, and determination could transcend species and appearances. And Leora, once underestimated for her looks, had shown that true value lay in insight, courage, and the willingness to see beyond the superficial. Together, they had not only solved a technical problem, but also reshaped the cultural landscape of the kingdom. As the twin suns set, painting the sky with shades of gold and violet, Curran and Leora sat in quiet reflection. The city below thrived under the stable energy network, and the citizens were beginning to embrace a new way of thinking. Curran knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be new challenges, new problems to solve, and new opportunities to demonstrate the value of collaboration. But for now, they could savor the victory, the quiet satisfaction of having achieved something truly remarkable. The city had laughed at them once. Now it stood in awe. The human and the princess had not only proven their own abilities, but had also inspired a society to look beyond appearances, to value skill, creativity, and heart. And as Curran and Leora looked out over the glowing city, they knew that the next chapter of their journey would be even more extraordinary. The city had changed. The golden light of dawn reflected off the crystal towers, illuminating streets that now thrived under the innovations Curran and Leora had introduced. Energy flowed steadily to every corner of the city, communication networks hummed smoothly, and citizens moved with newfound confidence, no longer burdened by frequent blackouts or inefficiency. The once skeptical eyes that had followed Curran into the palace now watched him with admiration, not only for the solutions he had brought, but also for the respect and equality he had shown to all who worked with him. Curran stood in the palace workshop, examining a new device alongside Leora. It was a transportation system designed to move goods and people efficiently across the city, reducing congestion and energy use. The two of them had worked on countless projects over the weeks, each one building on the lessons of the last. Curran adjusted a small energy regulator and tested the interface. The device hummed to life, moving smoothly along its track. "It works," he said quietly, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. Leora nodded, her hands resting lightly on the control panel. "It works because we worked together. Every adjustment we made was in sync, combining human creativity and our technology." The palace halls buzzed with news of their latest innovation. Officials, engineers, and city planners flocked to the workshop to observe the progress and provide feedback. Curran and Leora welcomed their input, explaining every detail patiently and encouraging others to suggest improvements. Their collaborative approach inspired a new culture of learning and problem-solving in the city. People realized that intelligence and innovation were more valuable than appearance, rank, or tradition. The king, who had been cautious when Curran first arrived, now observed their progress with quiet approval. He had seen how a human, once laughed at and underestimated, had not only understood alien technology but had improved it. He had witnessed Leora's wisdom in valuing competence over conformity, and the combination had created something extraordinary. He called them both to the palace courtyard for a special announcement. A large crowd gathered, their faces reflecting anticipation and curiosity. Curran and Leora stood together, the hum of their latest devices softly vibrating beneath their feet. The king raised his hand for silence. "Citizens of our great city," he began, his voice carrying clearly over the crowd, "today we celebrate a remarkable achievement. A human who arrived as an outsider has worked alongside my daughter to address challenges that have long troubled our home. They have shown that intelligence, creativity, and collaboration transcend appearances and prejudice." The crowd murmured, astonishment and admiration spreading across faces. The king continued, "From this day forward, Curran will be recognized as an honorary advisor to the kingdom, a symbol of what can be accomplished when differences are embraced and valued. And my daughter, Princess Leora, has shown that wisdom and insight matter far more than societal expectations." Applause erupted, filling the courtyard with sound. Citizens cheered, some wiping tears from their eyes. The laughter and mockery that had greeted Curran weeks before had vanished, replaced with respect, gratitude, and awe. Curran and Leora exchanged a glance, both aware that their work had changed more than just the city's infrastructure. It had shifted perspectives, broken old prejudices, and inspired a new way of thinking. "We've come far," Leora said softly, her eyes reflecting pride and wonder. Curran nodded. "Yes, and we've only begun." In the days that followed, Curran and Leora launched a city-wide initiative to encourage innovation and learning. Workshops were established in schools, community centers, and public spaces, where citizens of all ages could explore technology, experiment with ideas, and collaborate on projects. Curran introduced concepts from human engineering and problem-solving, while Leora provided insight into alien systems and energy sources. The combination was powerful. Children who had once been discouraged from tinkering freely now worked confidently alongside experienced engineers, learning to value curiosity and creativity above rigid tradition. The city's atmosphere shifted. Streets that had once been quiet and orderly were now alive with ideas. Public demonstrations, friendly competitions, and exhibitions became regular events. Citizens shared inventions, improvements, and discoveries openly. The air of skepticism and judgment that had dominated society gradually faded, replaced by enthusiasm, respect, and a spirit of cooperation. Curran and Leora were at the center, not as rulers or celebrities, but as mentors, guides, and collaborators. One afternoon, as they reviewed a new transportation design, Leora turned to Curran with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about how different things were when you first arrived?" she asked. Curran smiled. "Every day." The laughter, the whispers, the doubts, they seemed endless. And now, he gestured around the workshop filled with busy citizens and bright ideas. "It's almost unrecognizable," Leora nodded. "It is. We've changed the way people see value, skill, and each other. And I think that is even more important than any device we've created." Curran agreed. He had arrived as a human outsider, laughed at for his differences, underestimated because of his species, and yet he had found a place where his abilities mattered. More than that, he had helped a society see beyond superficial judgments and embrace the potential within everyone. Leora, too, had grown. Once dismissed for her appearance, she had demonstrated courage, wisdom, and the ability to recognize talent where others had failed to see it. Together, they had achieved something far greater than any invention, a transformation of perspective. The city council, once hesitant to allow a human to influence decisions, now sought Curran's guidance on new projects. Engineers requested his advice on energy efficiency, transportation, and urban planning. Citizens invited him to speak at public forums, eager to learn from the outsider who had helped reshape their world. Curran embraced the opportunities, always focusing on collaboration, learning, and problem-solving rather than recognition. One evening, after a long day of demonstrations and workshops, Curran and Leora walked through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the soft hum of the alien flora, the glow of the plants casting gentle light on their path. "Do you think people will ever stop judging by appearances?" Curran asked thoughtfully. Leora shook her head. "Some will always try, but most have learned to value what truly matters: skill, creativity, heart, and courage. And that is enough to change the world, one person at a time." Curran smiled, feeling a sense of peace he had rarely known. "It is amazing what can happen when people work together." Leora laughed softly. "Yes, and we've only just begun." As the weeks passed, Curran and Leora continued to expand their initiatives. New schools, workshops, and public labs were established across the city. Communities collaborated to solve everyday problems, applying the principles of innovation and cooperation that Curran and Leora had demonstrated. Devices were created to improve water distribution, communication networks, and public transport. Even simple inventions like automated gardens and energy-efficient homes brought joy and ease to citizens. The partnership between human and princess became legendary. Stories spread beyond the city, reaching distant planets where humans were rare visitors. Other societies took notice, sending ambassadors and scholars eager to learn from the methods of collaboration and innovation that had transformed one kingdom. Curran's reputation as a human of ingenuity and insight grew, not through power or force, but through ideas, problem-solving, and the willingness to see potential where others had not. Leora's wisdom, judgment, and courage were equally celebrated. Together, they had become a symbol of what could be achieved when curiosity, respect, and collaboration overcame prejudice. One afternoon, the king invited them to the royal balcony to observe the city. Below, streets bustled with activity, workshops filled with inventors and apprentices, and energy flowed steadily through the grids they had stabilized. The citizens waved and cheered as Curran and Leora stood side by side, acknowledging the admiration but remaining humble. "You have exceeded every expectation," the king said quietly. "You have done more than improve the city. You have changed hearts and minds. You have inspired generations." Curran glanced at Leora, who smiled softly. "We only did what we could," he said. "And we listened, learned, and worked together. That is what mattered most." Leora nodded. "Yes, and now the city can continue without relying solely on us. People have seen what is possible and they will carry it forward." As evening fell, the city lights glowed steadily, reflecting off the crystal towers like stars fallen to the earth. Curran and Leora walked through the palace gardens one last time that day, reflecting on how far they had come. The whispers and laughter that had once haunted the palace corridors were long gone, replaced by respect, admiration, and inspiration. The people who had doubted them now sought to emulate them, to think beyond appearances, and to embrace innovation and cooperation. Curran thought back to the day he had arrived, laughed at and underestimated by everyone he met. He remembered the nervous excitement, the fear of failure, and the determination to prove that a human could make a difference. And now, standing beside Leora, he saw the results of that determination. They had not only solved technical problems but had shown an entire society that true worth was measured by courage, intelligence, and heart. Leora, walking beside him, was equally reflective. She had once been dismissed as ugly by a society obsessed with appearance, yet she had proven her wisdom and judgment through action. By valuing Curran for his skill and integrity rather than his appearance, she had helped change perceptions, inspire innovation, and bring her people together. Her confidence in him, and in herself, had sparked a transformation that would be remembered for generations. The twin suns set behind the towers, casting long shadows and bathing the city in golden and violet light. Curran and Leora paused on a balcony, looking over the thriving city below. Citizens moved confidently, engineers and inventors collaborated openly, and the lessons of collaboration, respect, and innovation had begun to spread beyond the palace walls. The kingdom was no longer the same. It had grown wiser, kinder, and more open. And Curran and Leora had been the spark that ignited the change. As night fell and the city lights reflected in their eyes, Curran turned to Leora. "Do you think they will ever forget this?" he asked. She shook her head with a smile. "No, and they should not. It is a reminder that everyone has value and that true progress comes from working together, seeing beyond appearances and believing in what is possible." Curran nodded, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. "Then let us continue," he said. "There is still so much to do." Leora laughed softly. "Yes, and now the city will follow our example. They have seen what humans and princesses can achieve together." And so, the partnership that had begun as curiosity and courage became a lasting legacy. A human and a princess, once laughed at and underestimated, had inspired a society to see beyond superficial judgments, to embrace talent and collaboration, and to value intelligence, creativity, and heart above all else. Their work was far from over, but the city had learned the most important lesson of all: that greatness is measured not by appearance or reputation, but by the courage to create, to innovate, and to believe in each other. Curran and Leora stood side by side, overlooking the glowing city. The laughter that had once greeted them was long gone, replaced by awe, admiration, and hope. The kingdom had been transformed, and the human and the princess had shown the universe that true strength lies in collaboration, respect, and the courage to see beyond what others take for granted. Together, they had silenced the critics and inspired a brighter, more enlightened future. Everyone laughed when a human got the king's ugly daughter, then shocked silenced them.